The room was already judging her before she even touched the microphone. That's how it always starts, not with open confrontation, not with facts, but with whispers that crawl across the walls like shadows. If you've ever had to prove yourself twice as hard just to stand in the same place as everyone else, and stay with this story until the end. And if stories about resilience, integrity, and quiet strength inspire you, don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Honor, because what you're about to hear isn't just about the military, it's about what it truly means to earn your place. The conference hall at Naval Special Warfare Command was polished to perfection, flags aligned, medals gleaming under bright white lights, rows of decorated officers seated with rigid posture. This was meant to be a formal promotion ceremony, the kind that marked the culmination of decades of sacrifice. But as Commander Alyssa Park walked toward the podium, the silence in the room felt heavy, not respectful, calculated. 22 years of service, 4 classified deployments. More operational hours in combat zones than most of the men seated before her combined. Yet the murmurs had already started before her name was announced. Political promotion, someone muttered from the back. Guest standards aren't what they used to be, another added under his breath. Alyssa heard every word. She always did. When she completed Badia's training years ago, they said she must have received special treatment. When she earned her warfare insignia, they whispered that requirements had been adjusted. When she led her unit through 2 high-risk extraction missions that saved American diplomats overseas, they credited her team but not her leadership. She had learned long ago that for some people, excellence wasn't enough if it didn't come in the form they expected. As she reached the podium, she noticed Captain Richard Halstead seated in the front row, arms folded, expression tight with skepticism. He had formally objected to her promotion twice, citing concerns about leadership cohesion. Next to him sat Commander Blake Turner and Senior Chief Aaron Doyle, men who had never missed an opportunity to question her decisions in closed meetings. Alyssa adjusted the microphone, her hands steady. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice calm but firm. The air shifted slightly. "I understand that some of you may have questions about my qualifications." A ripple moved through the crowd. No one expected her to address it directly. "Some believe I don't represent the traditional image of a naval special warfare officer," she continued. "Some believe I advance because of optics, not merit." Halstead leaned forward slightly, almost curious now, but Alyssa's tone did not waver. "Let me tell you about merit," she said. "Let me tell you about the night in Helmand Province when my unit was ambushed and our communications went dark. I carried our injured medic across 2 kilometers of open terrain while coordinating air support under active fire. The room grew still. Let me tell you about the operation in the South Pacific where I spent 72 hours in a submerged reconnaissance position, barely moving, to gather intelligence that prevented a regional conflict." Her eyes moved deliberately across the room. "Let me tell you about the 12 confirmed firefights, the 3 injuries I sustained, and the 0 teammates I left behind." Even the quiet critics had stopped shifting in their seats. Alyssa reached into the inside pocket of her dress uniform and pulled out a small, slightly faded photograph. It showed a young girl standing proudly beside a man in navy dress blues. "This is my father, Chief Petty Officer Daniel Park. He served 30 years. He taught me that strength isn't about volume. It isn't about ego. It's about responsibility. It's about carrying weight when others can't." Her voice softened for a moment. "He also taught me that some battles are invisible. That sometimes the hardest mission isn't overseas, it's standing in a room where people have already decided who you are." She paused, allowing the silence to stretch. "For years, I believed if I trained harder, achieved more, sacrificed more, eventually the doubt would fade. That performance alone would silence criticism. Her gaze settled briefly on Halstead. But this was never about performance. It was about perception. The captain's jaw tightened. Alyssa straightened. So let me be clear. I am not here because standards were lowered. I am not here because of policy, politics, or preference. Her voice grew stronger. I am here because I earned it. The words were simple, but they carried the force of 2 decades of discipline. They didn't need embellishment. They were truth. No applause came immediately, but something else did: respect, the kind that builds slowly and cannot be forced. Within days, an internal audit uncovered that Halstead and his close associates had been manipulating readiness reports, overlooking safety violations in training exercises, and prioritizing appearance over operational integrity. The very standards they claimed to defend had been quietly compromised under their supervision. They were reassigned pending investigation. Alyssa never commented publicly. She didn't need to. Leadership, she believed, was not about vindication. It was about consistency. She stepped into her new role without fanfare, focusing on mentorship, accountability, and mission readiness. Younger officers, men and women, began seeking her guidance. They saw not just authority, but stability. Not just rank, but earned credibility. Months later, during a closed-door strategy session, a junior officer hesitated before presenting a proposal. Alyssa recognized the uncertainty in his eyes, the same doubt she had once felt reflected back at her. "Speak," she encouraged calmly. "If you've done the work, your voice belongs here." He did, and the room listened. That became her quiet legacy: not speeches, not headlines, but culture. A culture where performance mattered more than perception. Where standards were upheld not selectively, but consistently. And where no one had to shrink themselves to fit someone else's expectation of what leadership should look like. Years later, when asked during an interview what her greatest accomplishment was, she didn't mention combat deployments or strategic victories. She said, "Leaving the door open behind me," because she understood something that her critics never did. Proving yourself isn't about convincing those who refuse to see your worth. It's about living your values so clearly that doubt eventually becomes irrelevant. True strength isn't loud. It doesn't need constant validation. It stands firm, rooted in discipline, integrity, and service. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to fight silent battles while keeping your head high, remember this. You don't prove your worth to those determined to misunderstand you. You prove it through your actions, your consistency, and your refusal to compromise who you are. And if stories like this remind you that resilience still matters, subscribe to Voices of Honor for more powerful stories about courage, dignity, and earning your place the right way.